Hey everyone, so Apple's Audio sent me this Pro DAC that we're going to check out today. This is the RAW Pro DAC1. And it's got the flagship ES9039MS Pro DAC chip in it, which comes with built-in hard decoding for MQA. And it also has the high-res audio certification. And this product is made by the company SMSL, which is well known for their high-quality audio products. So let's go ahead and open it up and I'll tell you more about this DAC. So you get a nice user manual. You also get this SMSL card, which I'm not sure what it's for. And this is the power cable used for the RAW Pro DAC1. You do get a USB A to B cable, as well as a USB A to C cable. The nice thing about the RAW Pro DAC1 is that it also has Bluetooth 5.1 and supports codecs such as LDAC 24-bit/96 kilohertz, as well as aptX and aptX HD, SBC, and AAC. And this would be the little antenna you would hook up to the back of the DAC for that Bluetooth wireless connectivity. Now this remote control is also included, allowing you to control your DAC from a distance, such as the comfort of your couch. And it does have various buttons for the different functions. It does use 2 AAA batteries. And now for the DAC itself. And here it is, and this thing is quite heavy. It's actually just over 4 pounds, and you can really feel the weight on this. Got a nice metal construction. It has a very professional look that you would see with a high-end audio setup. Alright, and let's go ahead and peel this off the screen. Now we'll connect it up so you guys can see how the screen looks, the brightness, and so on. So on the bottom of the unit, you have these 4 circular feet that are going to protect your desktop surface from scratches. And as far as the dimensions of this DAC, it is quite a sizable DAC. It's 254 millimeters in width, 203 millimeters in depth, and 48 millimeters in height. And now if we power it on, we see the front display here. It displays the volume in decibels, as well as it tells you what input is being used and what format, such as PCM 44.1 kilohertz. And it's a pretty sizable display that you'll be able to see from a distance. And this DAC has a very clean design with some nice lines and a few curves here. And it just says SMSL RAW Pro DAC1 on the left here. And you do have this very large multifunction knob here, which will allow you to control things such as the volume. And if you press on it, it allows you to go into the settings menu, where you can get into things such as inputs. These are all the inputs that you can switch to. You can also get into the outputs menu. You can have all line out, balance, and unbalance. You can set your PCM filter. You can have filter off, minimum phase, apodizing, linear fast, or linear slow. You also have minimum fast, minimum slow, and low dispersion. You can also set your DSD filter at the 47K cutoff all the way up to 70K cutoff. You can also set what SMSL refers as to the sound color, which you can set to standard, rich 1, rich 2, 3, tube 1, 2, and 3, which I assume will make your audio such that it sounds like it's coming from a tube amplifier. You have crystal 1, 2, and 3, and again back to standard. Then you have your pre-mode. Right now it's on fixed, and we can go ahead and change that to variable. And if we do this, now we see that I'm able to adjust the volume, where before I couldn't do that when I turned the knob. And then you have the function key 4 setting, and there you get access to outputs, Bluetooth, and phase. Then you have the DPLL setting, default value is 5. The IS2 mode setting, and I'll briefly talk about I2S and a few other things that are included with this DAC. Most of you will not use it, so it's not important. Then you have the audio phase, normal or inverted. If for some reason you needed to invert it, you could do that. Then you have your UI style, universal, or graphics. You can also set the language. You can set the dimmer to off, 10 seconds, 15 seconds, all the way up to 60 seconds. You can also set the brightness. It's already quite bright, but you could set it up really bright like this if you wanted to. I'll just set it right here. And finally, you have an option to reset the DAC. So that's pretty much all the settings you can access with the multifunction knob here by pressing it. And this was a little tricky to find out. If you want to get out of the menu system, you're going to go ahead and hold down the knob for a few seconds and it'll bring you back to this display screen. All right, and now let's take a look at the back of the unit for all the inputs and outputs that are available on the RAW Pro DAC1. So on the left side of the DAC, you have your outputs, you have your XLR right and left here, as well as your unbalanced RCA outputs here for left and right. All these connectors are gold plated, which is really nice. And now for a couple of Pro ports that most people are not going to use, but if you use Pro Audio for some reason, or if you are going to connect up something like a high-end CD player, then this is where these 2 ports would come in. The AES EBU port that looks like an XLR connector here, and the I2S connector that looks like an HDMI cable connector. And then right on top of that is where you connect this Bluetooth antenna. Now we move on to the inputs. You have your coaxial input, your optical input, USB-C input, and USB-B input. So you have a plethora of inputs that you can use with this Pro DAC. So I think this is where the pro part of it comes, that you get all these options that you can use, especially these two ports, the I2S and the AES ports. You're not gonna see on your normal consumer DACs, but if you do need them, then this DAC is perfect for you. Otherwise, you can just ignore them and not use them. Then of course you have your standard power connector here. And then in here you have access to a fuse and finally an on-off switch. And as far as I know, it only comes in silver. With this DAC, they also allow you to do a firmware upgrade using the USB connections, which is really great. And not only does this device support MQA, but also supports MQA-CD. So if that's something that's important to you, then definitely this DAC might be for you. And it's got some other nice features such as low noise power supply processing. For the PCM audio format, it supports up to 32-bit at 768 kilohertz. For DSD, supports up to DSD 512. So definitely stay tuned for the rest of the video because I will be going over how this DAC sounds. And I really have some high hopes for it, so let's see how it sounds. So I'll be right back with my thoughts on the sound quality of the SMSL RAW Pro DAC1. And again, special thanks to Zadius for sending this to me. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do this video for you guys. All right, when comparing the sound of the SMSL RAW Pro DAC1, I'm gonna be comparing it against one of my personal DACs, and that is the Denafrips Aris 2. This comes in at around $1,200, which is double the price pretty much of the RAW Pro DAC1. But I'm very familiar with this DAC. It is an R2R DAC, which is a little bit different than the RAW Pro DAC1, which is a Delta Sigma DAC. And for the amp, I use the THX AAA 789 amplifier, which is a pretty clean and neutral amp. It doesn't add coloration or anything like that to the music. As for the headphones, I tried out the DAC with dynamic headphones, in particular these Sennheiser HC490 Pros, which I'm also very familiar with as I daily drive them. And I also tried the DAC with my new Mod House Tungsten V2s, which I got recently, and this is a planar magnetic headphone. So you get both a dynamic and planar magnetic that I'll be comparing. For the SMSL RAW Pro DAC1, you definitely get a more neutral sound signature with the tungsten headphones in this setup with the RAW Pro DAC1 and the 789 amplifier. You get a lot more detail in the vocals, just on the verge of getting harsh at times, but does not get there. It may be harder to listen on these headphones for longer periods of time because of that. The treble sounds more open and you can hear higher detail in the treble, but it never sounds sibilant. And this is all again compared to the Denafrips Aris 2 on my left here. You get a much wider soundstage on these headphones and more precise imaging. I've heard the tungstens with better DAC and amp setups, and I feel like this setup does a decent job of driving the tungstens, but I'll probably want to look into upgrading my DAC and amp components in the near future. All right, so first off, I'm gonna talk about the RAW Pro DAC1 with the HC490 Pros, with the PCM filter set to off and the sound color set to standard, which is a default. So one thing I noticed with this DAC is that I do pick up a little bit of background noise. It's really only noticeable if you listen at higher volumes like I do. This DAC is fairly neutral compared to something like my Denafrips Aris 2 R2R DAC. And while the bass is impactful, it does not extend very well into the sub-bass region like I was getting with the Denafrips DAC. It's more mid-bass focused with this DAC. The mid-range, especially vocals, sounded shouty and not as defined and controlled as on the Denafrips DAC. It may be difficult to listen to your music for long periods of time because of this. For the treble, you do get a good sense of air in the high frequencies, but the sparkle in the treble does produce a shimmer with cymbals and hi-hats. Guitar strings do sound a bit metallic at times as well. I do, however, get improved soundstage, and I think that has to do with the elevation of the treble with this DAC. I found that imaging was very good with this DAC and these headphones. Overall, the HD490 Pro with this setup presented with a very bright sound signature. My ears could not withstand listening for too long because of this. Luckily, the SMSL RAW Pro DAC1 gives you options for fixing things like brightness. All right, so to get to these settings to apply things like PCM filters and sound coloration, you'll want to go into the menu by pressing down on this multifunction dial here, and you can just press down once, and then you're gonna want to go down to PCM filter right here. Go ahead and press down on the button again, and you have several PCM filters to choose from: minimum phase, apodizing, linear fast, linear slow, minimum fast, minimum slow, and low dispersion. So after testing different PCM filters and coloration settings, I settled on minimum slow for the PCM filter. That helped tame the treble and really did a good job at reducing the glare. So once you decide on the PCM filter you want to select, you go ahead and press down on this dial again. And now to set the sound color, you can go ahead and go down to sound color, press the dial again. And for sound color, you do have the standard sound color option, but then you have things like rich sound color 1, 2, 3, tube 1, 2, 3, which all those are going to add some warmth to the sound. Then you have crystal 1, 2, and 3. That's going to increase the frequencies in the treble region. And so after playing around with the settings for the HC490 Pro, I found that the best sound color for this setup is actually going to be Rich 3. That's going to add some warmth and roll off those highs a bit that really help reduce the shimmer. So again, press down. And one important thing that I learned while reading online about this DAC is that if you do select a sound color, you have to make sure that you also select a PCM filter, because if you don't select a PCM filter and you just have it to filter off, apparently it will produce some distortion. So you don't want that. So make sure you do select a PCM filter if you're going to apply a sound color setting. I want to share with you how the HC490 Pro sounded with this sound configuration. And the great thing is that the music had added richness and warmth to it. There was some added mid bass and sub bass as well, which sounded really nice. The vocals were much easier on the ears and no longer sounded shouty. Vocals didn't sound the best with this setup, but at least it was bearable and I can listen to music for a good period of time without fatigue. The treble was tamed and brought closer to neutral. The new settings did a good job of taming the glare and shimmer that I was hearing earlier. I did feel, however, that I lost some of the wider soundstage with these settings. I think that had to do with the roll off in the treble region. So one great thing about this DAC is that if you don't like the standard sound that it comes with, you can use one of the PCM filters along with sound coloration settings to your music to sound closer to your listening preference. But the Denafrips errors, you're kind of limited on, just a couple of either a fast or slow filter, I believe, and whether you want oversampling or non-oversampling. So being able to change these settings is a big plus in my book. Now, how did this DAC do with my higher end headphones, the Modhouse Tungsten V2s? Well, with no PCM filter and no sound color set, this is what it sounded like. The mid bass had a very fast attack and decay and did not extend too well into the sub bass. The mid-range sounded pretty good, but vocals could sound harsh at times. The treble region was very good, but I did wish that it were a bit rolled off, as it would start to get fatiguing after a while. I think the overall sound with the setup with the tungsten is that of a fairly neutral sound signature with a touch of brightness. Soundstage was fairly wide and imaging, which was very good. One thing I have noticed though with the tungsten is that they love tube amps, and they do very well with a warmer sounding DAC or headphone amplifier. So I played with the settings on the DAC, and this is what I came up with that sounded best with the tungsten, which gave it a warmer tube sound. So the PCM filter I selected was the main key. I had to select the apodizing filter here, and this is what really made the tungsten sound really good. But adding a sound color to it also improved it. And I went with tube 3 to give it more of that tube sound that I said makes the tungstens sound really well. So how did the tungsten sound with this setup? The bass was really impactful, and it did reach down into the sub bass now. The string instruments in the mid sounded incredible with these settings. It's amazing how much the sound can change with using a filter and applying sound coloration. Vocals sounded crisp as well as being forward and well centered. The treble sounded well controlled with no signs of it ever being sibilant. I think that these settings did a great job of adding warmth and richness to the music and getting it really close to that traditional tube sound that makes the tungstens sound so good. Now, comparing the SMSL to my Denafrips R2R DAC, which one was better? I would say that the SML with the apodizing PCM filter and the tube sound color mode provided more resolution and detail than the Denafrips DAC. Well, the Denafrips presented a smoother listening experience. The Denafrips is twice the price of the SMSL, so it was interesting to see that the SMSL could get to that level of the Denafrips, although it did require me to play around with the PCM filters and sound color settings to get that music to sound just right for my listening preference. For the HC490 Pro headphones, however, I think it worked better with the Denafrips DAC. All in all, the SMSL RAW Pro DAC1 is a good option if you're looking for a new DAC, but just know that out of the box, it may be a little bit on the brighter side, which some people actually like. But for most, I think that you will need to play around with the PCM filters and sound color to get it just right. And this DAC sits at a pretty good price point considering all the modern features that it has, like the screen and the different PCM filters and sound color settings when compared to older DACs like the Denafrips Aris 2. And this SMSL is half the price of that DAC. And so one really nice thing about this DAC is of course the screen and the nice volume control here. You know, my Denafrips 2, for all the bit I paid for it, looks really old school, doesn't really have a screen, and it's hard to change settings on it. Like there's this multi button presses that you gotta do. So let me show you the front really quick. And yeah, just to get it to change to say non-oversampling, you'll have to do this combination of two buttons, wait a little bit, and then press it a certain button again. And yeah, that's super confusing. Who wants to deal with that? Well, thanks for joining me for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.